Yeah, so welcome to Never Broke Again. Today we have Joseph Cirulli
Joe
joining us
Cirulli.
today.
Joe
How about
Cirulli.
Joe? So,
All right, so we're friends now. I'll call him Joe. We won't call him Joseph. And of course, got Andrew with us today. So Joe is going to talk to us. And if you Google Joe's name, one of the very first articles that comes up is 21-year-old broke gym owner or something like that. And obviously, Joe has worked very hard to get where he is today. So he's going to share with us the skills that he's accumulated over a lifetime to ensure he never goes broke again.
And Joe is, I don't know what your title is over there, but you're I guess the CEO of Gainesville Health and Fitness, correct?
yes. Yeah.
So, do you have any other businesses beyond? That's a major, anybody who went to the University of Florida or has been through the Gainesville area, Joe's an icon, Gainesville icon. But is there any other businesses you have your hands in, or is that?
I also have two rehab centers that are tied into the two of the clubs. And going back about 4 years, I opened up a boutique studio, all built on strength training in Tampa and one in Palm Harbor, Florida. So we're working on that. We're just trying to figure out how to get more equipment out of Sweden, and we'll start expanding again.
So that's where the gym equipment comes from, Sweden?
No, this particular equipment, which I do have in my big center, it's called X-Force, and it was developed in Sweden, and it's the most sophisticated strength training equipment you'll ever find. And so we did a bunch of research on it back in 2012, and wrote two books on it that are bestsellers. And one day I was just looking, I said, I wonder if I could take this to another city. And just as a boutique where this is the only thing we do, if I could make it work. And it worked out perfectly, where there was an individual down there who was exceptional, and she was available. And I told her, I said, okay, you're going to be working with me now, and we're going to do this. And she started working on developing it. So she's running the centers down in that area right now.
But where is that? Tampa, you said?
Tampa and Palm Harbor, which is over by Clearwater, north of Clearwater.
Okay.
Yep.
So you said did you write these books, or you read these?
Yeah. We've written about 19 books out of our center, and they're by an author by the name of Ellington Darden, who's written 50 books. And he used to be he was in charge of all the research for Nautilus Sports Medical Industries. And we formed a relationship back in the 80s, and did a big research project and built around building strength, losing body fat, using Nautilus equipment. And that was the first book, came out in 1987. So over the years, we've done just all kinds of research on strength training, on meal planning. And so that's how all the books were developed. So he was the author. His name is Ellington Darden. He's pretty famous in the strength training world.
Darden, D-A-R-D-E-N?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you help him write any of these?
No, we do all the training for him. He keeps all the data. They're all my members. So, I mean, all the research is just great for the members because they get phenomenal results going through the program. So, I mean, obviously I provide the facilities, I have the equipment, I have the trainers. So we do all the work. He keeps all the data.
Right. So you say rehabs, you don't mean like addiction centers or anything. You mean like physical rehab, right?
Orthopedic rehabilitation. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Joe, how did all of this start?
Well,
take us back. Let's hop in the DeLorean and go back in time when you're getting started with everything here.
Well, first of all, I never planned to get into this business. I was 19 years old. I was taking a year off from college. A buddy of mine and I were going to travel around the country. But right when I got time to do it, he decided he didn't want to leave the job he had. I didn't want to go traveling around the country all by myself. But there was a girl that I went out with up in my hometown in upstate New York, in a little town called Elmira. She came down to Gainesville to go to school because her brother lived here. So the plan was always to come to Gainesville for 30 days and then go back home, go back to work, save money and go back to school again. But my first day here, I needed to work out. And it just so happened that her brother, Frank, was a member of the Steve Spurrier Health Spa. And so I asked him, I said, Frank, you think I could go with you? He goes, sure. So I went there and I worked out. And when I was done, I went to the manager and I told him, look, I'm only in town for 30 days. I don't have enough money to pay you to work out, but I'd be willing to work for free if you'll let me work out for free. I mean, I started lifting weights when I was 9 years old. So, I mean, I had trained a lot of people all through high school and everything. And so he said, fine. So I worked all day Wednesdays and all day on Saturday, but I could train whenever I wanted. At the end of 30 days, I decided I'd stay for 30 more days and go home at Christmas. And, but this time I went to the manager and I told him, look, I want to come to work more, but I would like if you paid me. And so he agreed. I remember I got paid $1.90 an hour, which was very exciting because everybody else was making like $1.65 an hour. So I thought I showed them I had done a good job. So I continued to keep working as an instructor and went home at Christmas time. I was going to go back to work with a friend of mine who was a mason, but he said, Joe, it's just too frozen up here to do anything. The ground's too frozen. He said, why don't you go back down to that Gainesville place and then come back at the end of March. So I came back down. I mean, there's lots of stories that occurred. And what happened was, obviously, I didn't come back at the end of 90 days. But during that period of time, over the next few years, I ended up working for 6 companies that went bankrupt, all in the health club business. And but I kept hanging on because I realized I really loved it. And I knew it was a good business, except the people who were running the businesses, they cared so much about making money, they forgot how to take care of people. And I knew that the answer was you take care of people. And if you do that right, you'll make the sales and you'll make the money. So there's lots of things I learned, but by the time I was 24 and a half and the 6th one went bankrupt, I decided, I think I don't know everything to do, but I sure in hell learned a lot of things you never do. And so I started the business when I was 24 and I've been working on it ever since.
How were you living back then, making $1.90 an hour? What was that like?
Well, the girl that I'd come to see, she had an apartment. So in the beginning that was fine. But if you take over the next few years, I lived in my car. I lived in closed down buildings. I lived in health clubs I worked in because I didn't have another place to live. So I figured out how to do it no matter, I didn't want to get out of the business. And even when they went bankrupt, I just said, I'll just keep working through this and until the next opportunity comes. But where I was really, really fortunate was when I was 20 years old, I opened up a drawer and there was a book in it and it was called The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And I remember I looked at it, I said, I've heard of these books before. I've never read one, but anyway, I started reading it. And it started talking about all these phenomenal things people did because of how they set goals for themselves. And, the funny thing is I come from a very middle-class family. And there's 4 sisters and 2 brothers. There were 7 of us. My father was military. My mother was a nurse. So I thought my thinking in the future was always what I knew. And, when I looked, it was what I already was used to until I started reading that book. And I realized, wow, people have really accomplished some great things because they set goals for themselves. So I set a goal because I had just gotten into sales, and that's another story, but I just had gotten into sales in the health club, and it was a fairly large company. And so after I read the book, I set a goal to be the top salesperson in the entire company. And 3 months later, I was the top salesperson of the whole company. I was like, how the hell did that happen? I set a goal and I did it. And that's why at the end of the 3 months, I thought, no, I really like this. And I think probably the biggest eye opener for me was I never really saw people growing up. Everybody worked hard. I mean, my father worked hard. everybody in our neighborhood worked hard, but it's not like after my father retired from the military, like everybody had a great passion for what they did. They worked hard because they had a family and they had to pay the bills, and that's how they were built to do that. And, all of a sudden I started making money doing sales in the health club. And I thought, well, this is really odd. I really love doing this and I'm making money at the same time. I mean, that was like an anomaly to me that you could love something and make money, doing it. And so that just kept me going. And even during all those clubs I worked for that went bankrupt, I kept finding the next book and the next book and the next book. I spent 5 years really filling my brain with some of the greatest speakers, the greatest books, all on how you get this set right so that no matter what happens, you accept it and you keep going. And that was probably the thing for me that's never left me. And when I tell you, I read and I listened, I mean, I bought tape series back then from a company called Nightingale Conant. And I mean, I would listen to those series over and over and over. I mean, there's one called The Psychology of Winning. I remember by a guy by the name of Dennis Waitley, who was a psychologist. And he talked about how these things worked, meaning how, when I was so inspired by the books, he started talking about this is how it works. This is what happens to you. And I mean, I listened to that tape series, and I'm not exaggerating, 40 times, and there were 12 tapes. And I bought about 40 copies of it to give to friends because it was just so powerful to me. But I also, when I was 21, I came across a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And that was after I got done living in my car, and now I got another job. And for the first time, I was running a health club when I was 21. And I thought, well, maybe I better go find another book. So I go to the bookstore and I look on the shelves and I see this book says Think and Grow Rich. I thought, well, that's an interesting title. So I took it and I looked at the back. I remember it said, this book has been responsible for more people becoming millionaires than any book ever written. And it was written like in 1937. And I thought, well, that's pretty powerful statement. So I started reading it. And you'd be reading and reading, and it would say, in order to be successful, you have to know the secret. And you'd keep reading and say, in order to be successful, you have to know the secret. I remember I got to a certain point and I just said, just tell me the damn secret. I'm reading through the thing. And like I said, not that I ever thought of becoming a millionaire. Trust me, when you get done living in your car and get down to 12 cents, your thought isn't becoming a millionaire. But I always had gratitude for everything I was going through, even when it was miserable. I never complained. I never said, woe is me. I actually had gratitude for everything. And so when I got done reading the book, I finally realized what the secret was. And it was pretty simple. You just had to know what you wanted out of your life. So that's when I took a legal pad and I wrote down 10 things. And the very first thing on my list was, I will own my own health club in Gainesville, Florida, so no one is ever going to tell me where I have to live. Because I had to live in Cocoa Beach, or Merritt Island, I had to live in St. Petersburg, and I just wanted to be in Gainesville. Then I started writing a whole series of things. Like the second thing is, I'll make the health club respected in the Gainesville community, because health clubs had a terrible reputation when I began. They all shut down, just terrible reputations. Then I started writing fun things down, like, I'll own a home in the mountains, I'll own a home in the ocean, I'll build my parents a home. I put down, by time I'll make $100,000 by the time I'm 25 years old. Then other things. I'll become a pilot, own my own airplane. I'll become a black belt. I'll travel around America. I'll travel around the world. I remember the last thing on my list was, I'll save $1 million. And the only reason I put that down, because when I was growing up, everybody used to always say, I wish I had $1 million. So I said, well, let's just put it on the list. So I put it on the list. And the other thing I did though, is I read my list every single night and every single morning for years. And what I realized, it's not like I thought about those things during the day, but it made me work really hard, and it made me stay focused all the time. And, eventually when the Six Club went bankrupt, that's when I said, maybe it's my time to start. So, and that's another long story of how I got the business and got it started, because I started my whole health club with $1,700, but nobody knew I had $1,700. So I hired everybody to build the place. And I hired electricians, carpenters, plumbers, air conditioning people. I said, I had no money to pay any of them. The only guy I didn't hire was, unlike the guy who had an electrical company, and he asked me how I was going to pay for it, so I didn't hire him. And but I also knew back then that you could advertise and not have to pay for it for 30 days. So I advertised like crazy. So somehow every week I had enough money to keep paying those guys to keep going on for another week. So I got the health club going. But probably the biggest aha moment was, I had that by the time I'm 25, I'll make $100,000. Well, when I was 21, I made about $11,000. When I was 22, I made about $12,000. When I was 23, I made about $12,500. Still reading my list though. And I remember one day I went to my list and I put a line through 100,000. I put 60,000. I didn't quite know how I was going to do that one either, but it didn't seem as far away as 100,000. But I was still reading books, and I read a massive book by the same author that wrote Think and Grow Rich called The Laws of Success. And when I read it, it says I topped out. It says you're just supposed to believe. So I put a line through 60,000 and put 100,000 back, having no clue. Well, once again, when I was 24 and a half and I started my company, everything I did was to build it, to make it the best I could make it. But the day that I turned 26 years old, I had exactly $100,000 in my savings account. And it wasn't 99,000 and it wasn't 101,000. It was the exact number I wrote down. And when I saw that, I said, oh, it's all true. I can do anything I set my mind to. And within 10 years, I did every single thing on that list. I mean, I travel around America, I travel around the world. And the only thing I didn't know is that people would pay me to travel around the world. But that's always a great experience because I have great friendships all over the world. And so everything has really turned out great. But probably the most rewarding thing, I mean, I have staff who've been with me 20, 30, and over 40 years. We've been working together, and obviously we're like a family now, but I'm fortunate all the way around. I have great members. I have members who are with me that I enrolled them in January of 1974. When I first got into sale, they're still members, of the club. So everything about it has been very rewarding. There's nothing else that I want to do. And as I was telling people at this meeting, I said, I get offers to buy my business. I said, so you can give me as much money as you want, but I can only sit in Starbucks for so long and I'll be wanting to do what I already been doing. So anyway, that's kind of the abbreviated version of the beginning.
Yeah. Speaking of selling the business, yeah, somebody comes in over the top. I always get worried if you sell the business, then what, right? Like, then what's your purpose? That's what, like, I had a good friend, a pretty good friend. He sold his business for a lot of money, 7, 8 figures. And then within a couple of years, he
No, I know. Yeah, of course.
killed himself.
No, that's
right.
Yeah.
And because he just kind of went crazy.
Yeah.
Because that was his whole life for 50, whatever it was. He was 75, 50 years or so. That was his whole life. And it was great that he made the 30, but all of us would rather him still be alive than have the 30 million that he sold it for. But he's ultimately worth about 100.
Yeah.
All he made over the years. But that's something that kind of haunts me a little bit, not gonna lie. But so I don't think I'll ever retire. Is that kind of where you're thinking, or is it?
No, I mean, I know before you can do anything like that, you better know what the next purpose there, or your next purpose.
Yeah,
Because like I said, you can only hang out in Starbucks for so long.
yeah,
You can only buy so many homes. You can only find so many different ways to move from point A to point B. You can only buy so many vehicles. I think that the trick, I don't know if it's a trick, but the most important thing is that you work hard to have enough money so you don't have to worry about money. That to me was probably the biggest thing, not to have to worry about money, but not have it being a driving force for me in developing my business. When I was 21, I read a quote by Zig Ziglar, and it said, if you help enough people get what they want out of life, you'll get everything you want out of life. And I read that and I said, that's what the essence of business is. And so everybody I teach in my staff, so the most important thing is you don't worry about yourself. You find out how you can help other people. And if you figure that one out, you'll see they'll figure you out and you won't have to worry about anything. You just find ways to help other people. And that's how I built the whole business, hopefully with my members and my staff. So.
Do you have kids, or are you married, or?
No, I was married when I was younger, but I never got remarried. We didn't have any children, but I have hundreds of them that I work with every day. So not children, but they're still a lot of college, so they're still figuring out their life. And so, I mean, I spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah.
During this whole adventure, Joe, was there a time where you were miserable, you wanted to give up?
No, I wouldn't say. I mean, I went through like periods like for 3 hours and then got over it. No, I think probably in the beginning, the biggest challenge was, I've always told people, it was just being lonely. When you're, like I said, when you're living in a car or a closed down building, it's not like you have a lot of contacts, during that period of time. So I think that it's funny because this is the honest to God's truth. There would be times I would go into McDonald's only because it reminded me of home. That's how lonely you can get at times, but I never let those things affect me. There was one time when I got transferred to the Merritt Island area, over on not too far south of you. And I got transferred and I moved into a hotel on Cocoa Beach. And there's a causeway between Cocoa Beach, it's a 520 causeway, into Merritt Island. And I used to drive back and forth. And my whole life consists of, I'd work all day, I'd work out at night, I'd go back to the hotel, go to sleep, get in the morning, drive to work all day, work out at night, drive back to the Holiday. I got transferred down there. I just hated it. It's a beautiful area, but it wasn't me. And one day I was driving to work and I decided I was going to quit. I was 20 years old and I decided I was going to quit. Then I asked myself the question, what am I going to do after I quit? I mean, am I going to go home and live with my parents back up in New York? I mean, I had great parents, but I wasn't ready to move back home. And so I thought, well, that book, The Power of Positive Thinking, is real helpful. Maybe I can go find another one. And I went to the bookstore. I say this book called The Amazing Results of Positive Thinking. And I thought that it was a book written about people like me who read the book and actually, accomplished something. And I read it, and that's not what it was. It was about, I'd be reading through it, and I'd be reading about these people who went through the most miserable times and how they worked their way through it and became successful. And I'd be reading that book and I go, I don't have a problem. That guy, he had a problem. I went through enough of those. I said, I just have an attitude problem. I got to change my thinking. And I did. The health club was located in the mall. And I realized one of the things that was happening with me was, it's Cocoa Beach is like, surfers and stuff. It's just kind of way more laid back than I was ever used to. But I realized I was like slowing down. So I remember I told the manager, I wasn't the manager, told the manager, I'll be right back. I got up and I walked through the mall as fast as I could walk through the mall just to get my brain back into gear. And I did. And I got everything back. I mean, there were a whole bunch of challenges after that, but I got my brain back, while I was down there.
So yeah, what do you think your biggest adversity is outside of those, obviously getting into the industry, but breaking ground pretty much with Gainesville Health and Fitness, starting that. I think that was that your first business? Was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you had any like big adversities over the years, like that you had to overcome? Or has it just all been like, or do you see them as not adversities as
No. I look at it not adversity because that's like a wall in front of you. I just looked at them as the challenges I had to go through. I mean, there was I started out in a very small shopping center and I got it as big as I could get it, which was like 11,000 square feet. And this was over the years, taking over store after store that went out. I'd take it over and expand my club. And I was in the middle of doing a pretty big expansion to that facility, but I couldn't do it on the ground floor. So I actually found there was I don't know how many 5,000 square feet space that was available upstairs over to it would have been to my east. And I put all the plans together. I had torn everything apart. I was going to build this huge stairwell going up through the top of the building. I had ordered a $40,000 at that point glass walkway to connect the two. I mean, I had all this planned out when the city said, hey, you can't do this. You've got your 3 parking spaces short to be able to do this. And there was no other place to get 3 parking spaces. So they brought everything to a halt. Now, someone say, oh my God, what a problem that would have been. But actually, a lot of times things happen in your life, think they're bad, but they end up being the thing that kind of saved you. So during that period of time, there was a new company from Wisconsin. It was called New Horizons. They were moving to Florida. They opened up a health club in Clearwater. And one day they sent the guy up. Well, they sent this guy, said, can I talk to you? I said, yeah. He was representing New Horizons. And when here's the conversation. I just want you to know, New Horizons is coming to Gainesville and we're going to put you out of business. And I remember I'm sitting there and I'm talking to him just like I'm talking to you now. And the only thing that's going through my mind is, you have no idea what I've gone through that you think I will roll over for you. So the first thing I did was I went down to Clearwater to look at the facility, and it was nice, and it was going to be nicer than mine. And but also, like I said, there's this thing called serendipity. Across the street from my club, there was a Winn-Dixie grocery store, and every time I drive by it, I go, man, what a perfect place for health club. Well, I mean, I must have said that every time I drove past it. And then one Saturday night, I was at dinner. And one of the guys said, hey, I see the Winn-Dixie went out of business. I said, which Winn-Dixie? They go, the one right across the street from you. They shut down today. I mean, first thing that went through my mind was, oh my God, all the stuff I've read is true. I actually thought these guys out of business. So anyway, so now I get now I got to find out who owns the building. So I found out there were 2 old men, Fred Cohn and Ben Franklin, not the original, but close. And so I called him up on Monday morning and he said, I said, do you think I can come over and talk to you? Without going into the whole story, I ended up going to see that man for the next 6 months. He would never okay it.
Really?
He was 78 years old. He worked in many banks that had been burnt by health clubs because they all went bankrupt. And all he knew about health clubs was they went bankrupt, but it didn't matter. I went back and saw him the next day. And when he wasn't there, he had a secretary. Her name was Bee. And Bee had worked for him for 32 years. If you ever saw the movie Poltergeist, she looked like the little grandmother in Poltergeist. But when he wasn't there, I'd sit down and I'd talk to Bee. And we just became friends. She would tell me what was on his mind. I'd get all the information. Next day, I'd be in there talking to him, but he had no idea how I knew what the hell he was even thinking. But this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And then I heard that a grocery store was going to go in there. So you asked, did I ever get down or whatever? Yeah, that's when I got depressed for about 3 hours. And I thought about it. I say, you never get anywhere being depressed. So I sat up all night long and I put a list of all the reasons why he did want us and he didn't want them. And the next morning I went and said, Mr. Cohn, do you think I could go over something with you? He said, sure. I said, I want to tell you why you want us, why you don't want them. I sat there and read that list for the next hour. And he looks at me at the end, he goes, sounds good, thank you. And I got up and left. But I came back the next day, next day, and next day. And the good thing was that grocery store really was hesitant. I even said to him, I said, Mr. Cohn, I said, you know what you're doing to me? That grocery store is doing to you. And, not giving them an answer, not accepting it. But I kept going back and going back. I learned so much stuff. After about 5 months, I resorted to bribery. And I knew he had bad legs. He had bad legs. I went down to Nautilus and I got one of their brand new recumbent bicycles and I had it delivered to his office. Yeah. I found out what kind of whiskey he drank. I had it delivered to his office. He chewed tobacco. I went to Micanopy, this little antique town, and I bought a spittoon. It took me 6 hours to shine up. I had it delivered to his office. People started calling me up when they heard what I was doing and telling me what he liked. So I knew what the next thing was. But this was something else I knew. I went to, like I said, I was in his office like 5 days a week. Wow. And he had a calendar on the wall. And, I saw it the next month and the next month and the next month. And all the calendars were like a pretty girl in a bikini, right? Or a swimsuit. And so I knew he liked pretty girls. I'd find the most beautiful girls and say, would you do me a favor? What? I said, would you mind delivering this over to this? So every day I had a new beautiful girl delivering gifts, to him. One girl who she ended up being in the movies. I said, Kelly, what did he say when you walked in? Because I knew she was just beautiful. And he goes, well, she was on the phone. He was on the phone. He goes, hold on. An angel just walked into my office. Well, after a while, all his friends knew what I was doing. Everybody knew what I was doing. And his friends started telling him, just give him the goddamn place. Just give him the place. And so I went in one day. Remember, this is now 5 months after I started. And he's on the phone and he's talking to a pharmacy who's interested in the space. And I'm standing in front of him. And I remember he looks at me, he's looking at me and he goes, yeah, no, I know, I understand, but I'm leaning, he goes, I'm really leaning towards my Italian stallion standing right here in front of me. That was the first time after 5 months that he ever gave me an indication. And he hangs up the phone, he goes, look, you've got to meet with my partner. Now, I always heard of Ben Franklin. We all heard of Ben Franklin, but this Ben Franklin. And all I ever heard about him was, how people say, what kind of person is he? Oh, he's a good guy, or he's a this, or he's that. Ben Franklin's description: he's a mean son of a bitch. that was Ben Franklin. So anyway, a month later, I'm in an office and Fred is sitting behind the desk. Ben is sitting about 10 feet away, and Ben was 80 years old. He starts asking me all these questions. Are you married? No, sir. Don't you believe in marriage? I go, yeah, I do, sir. I just haven't met the person I want to marry. Do you drink? And then Fred would pitch in, I checked on that. This boy may have 1 beer a year. So these questions like this kept going on. And I realized they were going to go on forever. So I took my chair. Remember, I was about 10 feet away. I moved him so I was 10 inches away. I was so far inside his comfort zone. He was going like this. And he goes, how much rent will you pay? I said, I'll pay the same amount of rent today as I told you I'd pay 6 months ago when I first came here. And they talked and they said, okay, you can have it. So that was after 6 months. And then I started, but here's the funny part. Because of the relationship that I built with B, while I was there one day, two health club companies, including New Horizons, called about the space within 10 minutes while I was in there. And here was B's response. I don't know if any health club is going to go in there yet, but if anyone does, it's going to be the Gainesville Health and Fitness Center. Thank you for calling. She'd hang up. I mean, this is how it went. And then at the end of 6 months, I put everything together and started building it. And it took probably about 12 months to build. And then we transitioned from the other location to the new location. And, you know, I was there for a number of years. Mr. Cohn, who he reminded my grandfather then. I mean, I just love the guy, but he ended up dying. Ben, the other owner, he ended up giving it to his sons. And it wasn't the same as when I dealt with the fathers, because like Mr. Cohn said to me one day, he goes, son, he goes, I deal in a handshake. I said, sir, I do too. And so that's how it was. When the sons came in, some other things kind of popped up that I didn't like. And I said, you know, I got two things that have control over me. I said, you got the government, which there's not much you can do about that. Over time, I realized there are some things you can do about it, but you have the government and you have a landlord. And I said, I can get rid of the landlord part. So I started driving up and down University Avenue, and I saw this big patch of land. And I asked people, who owns that place? So they told me, and they said, he'll never sell it to you. But I called him up, and I went and saw, his name was Jack, great guy. He was 75 years old or so then. And I said, do you think I could sit down with you? I went to see him every day for 14 days. We just sat down and talked, because I know the most important thing is the person has to trust you, right? And the only way you can build trust is over time. You don't get trust. Someone would think, he just was a phony for a day. But you can't be a phony 14 days in a row for hours, right? And at the end of 14 days, I said, Jack, I said, I'd like to make an offer, you know, on your property. And I made the offer. And he goes, well, Joe, he goes, I just can't do it. You know, and this is what he told everybody, was, you know, I just can't do it. So I said, well, Jack, I said, I understand that. I said, but I just want to tell you how great it was getting to know you. I said, I know that 2 weeks ago, I didn't know you at all. I said, but over the last 2 weeks, I realize you're a great guy. And I just want to say thank you for the time. And I hung up the phone. I just sat in front of the phone saying, please call back. Please call back. And 10 minutes later, he called me back and he said, Joe, I think we can do it. And that's when we started building our big facility. And so that's kind of how those things went. So, but like I said, I didn't look at it as something like, oh no, woe is me. It was like, no, I'm not even quite sure how I looked at it, except no, I got to go sit down and talk with him. And then, no, I got to go back. And no, I've got to go back and talk some more. And he's got to know that he can trust me, that when I give him my word, it's my word. And because he said the same thing Fred said to me, because, you know, son, I deal on a handshake. And I said, I do too. You know, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I don't have to sign a piece of paper, you know, to do it. And so when you ask for any challenges or whatever, I guess you could say those were challenges, but to me, they were just the things you had to do to keep moving forward.
How did you get the money to pay for all this? Did you have the money or did you have to borrow it?
Well, I borrowed some on buying the land, and I got a mortgage, you know, on the building. But I kind of proved to all the bankers that we were financially strong, because I always save money, always. I'll tell you another little tiny book, this big, called The Richest Man in Babylon. I read the book, and I realized the most important thing you got to do is when you get paid, the first thing you got to do is pay yourself, not pay everybody else, pay yourself. So I've always set up the habit of, as soon as I got any money, boom, I always saved 10% of it in the beginning. You know, over the years, I got my father to retire and move to Gainesville from upstate New York and go to work for him. My father worked for me for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And I remember I said, you know, Dad, they say that like Americans, if they save money, save about 10%. They said Asians save about 30%. Am I American or Asian? He goes, you're definitely Asian. So, so I've always saved so that I was always in a strong position. It was just like with the pandemic. I wasn't nervous at all when all that stuff happened because I prepared. I prepared my whole life. I prepared for it. So financially, we had no issues. I was able to keep paying the whole staff, even during the months that we were closed. So I've just been fortunate all the way around.
I think the Jews saved like 75%. Right?
Yeah.
So
I haven't become Jewish yet, but we're good.
Are you Jewish now?
I'm still an Italian Asian.
So just gotta give the audience some perspective. How big is your facility in Gainesville?
My biggest one, the inside structure is 80,000 square feet. But this past year, I built a outdoor facility that's elevated over a retention pond, which is another story, which is 6,000 square feet. I have another center that has 25,000 enclosed and 4,000 on the outside, on exterior. And we're planning on expanding that one, but when everything hit, the price of construction has gone up so much, I got to wait for it to kind of work its way down to do that major project on it, because that's the only place that I rent. My 80,000 square foot facility I own, and I also have a smaller women's center. It's about 14,000 square feet that I actually opened back in 1984, but it's still completely modern, completely renovated 3 years ago, and then I have the rehab center is located within the 25,000 square foot and the 80,000 square foot club. And then the boutique facilities are just right around 3,000, square feet.
And how many members do you have?
Well, before the pandemic, we were at a little over 28,000. During the pandemic, we had about 6,000 members cancel. Now, typically, every health club has people who cancel for one reason or another, but you can have sales to make up, for those losses. But obviously, we had to go months without being able to replace them. So we lost about 6,000, and now we're approaching back to 25,000. So it's growing. I mean, we've been growing every month for a year now, and it's just a matter of time before we get back up there.
Going on what you said about the Babylon book, paying yourself first.
Yeah.
How did you determine how much to pay yourself when running your business?
In the beginning, I took 10%. I mean, over time, we would just calculate, what do we need for this, and this? That would leave us this is how much we're gonna save. I mean, we save a good amount of money every single month now. And that's allowed me, I mean, we did, it's another story, but I read a book called The New Rules of Retail in 2011, and it talked about all the challenges that department stores were having with all the little boutiques, the Lululemons and all these stores, that the women were leaving the big stores and going to these smaller stores. And so we decided, I looked at it and I said, health clubs are going to be impacted by the boutiques the same way. And I said, the secret is build the boutiques inside of the center. And so I have a great architect. He's the best in our industry. His name is Rudy Fabiano, and he lives right outside of New York City. And I called him, and even though he's the best in the world in health clubs, he doesn't have a big ego at all. And so I called him. I told him about the book. And as I'm going through it, he goes, "That's very intriguing to me." And I said, "Rudy, I think it'll change the way you design health clubs in the future." And so I said, "Why don't you go get the book and read it so we can literally be talking from the same page?" And I said, "In the meantime, do me a big favor." He goes, "What?" I said, "Go into New York City, go to the newest Bloomingdale's." I said, "Walk around it and look at it not like it's a department store. Look at it like it's a health club, and tell me what you see." So he did. He goes, very, very interesting when he took that whole different perspective on it. And so we started putting our plans together for how we would do it. I had to do 12,000 square foot expansion over a retention pond. So I had to get the approval and all for that, and I did. And so we built that, and from the beginning of that expansion in 2012, then we started working back through the entire health club and remodeled every section of the club. So I finished at the end of 2018. It altogether spent $11 million. But the great thing was I didn't have to borrow any money. We were able to do it out of cash flow. So by the time we were done, there was no debt or anything, that was on it. Because like I said in the beginning, I only care about how do we make it the best. I don't worry about, a lot of people say, well, how are you going to make money on that? I said, I don't know. I said, but I figure if I make it better, more people will want to come in. And it's always, for me, it's always worked out, that way.
Yeah, living in Gainesville, Florida. Who have you met some interesting people? You've been dropping some names like Fabiano and all sorts of things. So it seems like you probably met some cool people coming through Gainesville, Florida.
Well, coming through, yeah. Obviously a lot of people come through Gainesville for one reason or another. I remember even the beginning of my health club, some big names came through. Rodney Dangerfield came to if you remember the name Rodney Dangerfield, the comedian. He came to my club and we just sat down and talked. I said, he's like talking to the guy next door. He's probably the funniest person you'll ever listen to, next to Robin Williams. And but there have been a lot of actors, actresses that have come in over the years. But what I found is they're all really nice. They're really nice people. But those aren't the people that really made the impact on me. I've had people, look, I started as an instructor, right? I still have members who were with me when I started as an instructor at Steve Spurrier. There were members with me so long. There have been members that I've been with them the day they died and sat down. One interesting story. I get a phone call, a message. Hey, Joe, so-and-so called and he just said he'll be dying today and he just wanted to say thanks for everything. I thought, what? So I called him. I said, I got this message. He goes, yeah, I'll be dying tonight. And I said, who are you with? He goes, my lawyer. I go, is there anybody else? He goes, well, my daughter's here. I said, let me talk to your daughter. And so she gets on the phone. She goes, yeah, he'll die today. And so I said, do you mind if I come over? I went over. I sat next to him on the bed. He held my hand for 3 hours. And we just talked. And there was a picture of his wife at the end of his bed. He goes, I'll be with her tonight. So I left. I went over there at 1 o'clock. I left at 4 o'clock. The daughter called me at 5 o'clock and he had died. But other members, I've been with other members. It's funny. You think they're going to die. And you wonder what goes through their head. And he just talked about, I'll be with her. And another member I was with from when I was 19 years old, a guy named was Latham Davis. And I was with him the day he died. And when I left where he was at, I kissed him on the cheek and I said, it was great to know you, Latham. He goes, well, Joe, he goes, you think the Gators are going to be okay? So you never know. But yeah, I've been through it with them. So those are the people that make a difference, not the movie stars or the other ones. It's temporary. But the friendships that you build, last your whole life.
Yeah, that's inspiring. How long have you been in business well,
let's put it this way. I started in the business 48 years ago.
Yeah.
So my business is 44 years since I started Gainesville Health and Fitness Center, 43.
Most businesses aren't around that long, let's be honest. There's not a lot of 100 or 50 or 125-year-old businesses.
Yeah, well, I had 3 employees, when I first started. One of them is still with me. And one of them, she died. And another one is still a close friend of mine. He still lives in Gainesville. And but I have many employees who've been with me 30 and 40 years. So, I mean, it goes beyond you just work together. I mean, you're there for everybody, right? If anything happens in anybody's family, everybody's there, for them. So it becomes.
So do you guys offer like a 401k? Do you help take care of your employees that way, or?
No, we don't have it. We never found one that made sense, pay them well and just take care of them. And,
Yeah.
If there's ever an issue where they need more help, I'll help them.
Yeah.
They all work hard. They all work hard. It doesn't matter how. It's not like they work with me and they've been with me a long time and they can kind of coast. Nobody coasts in my business.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I'm fortunate, all the way around.
Do you still attend like sales meetings every day, or are you kind of like stepping out a little bit?
No, I have a Monday morning. I have a meeting with all the leaders in the company.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing that. I've been doing that forever. I mean, 30 years, every Monday. People say, how do you have stuff to keep talking about every Monday? But we still meet for like 3 hours. We go through everything. Yeah. And the main reason I do that, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, that nobody's going off on a tangent. We keep us all focused on what's important. I don't run the sales meeting, but I go to all of the sales meetings. I take new employees at least 2 times a month. We take 5 employees to lunch just so we can learn more about them. Because I let them know that I don't think of you as just this worker bee. I know you're a human being and you got feelings and you got dreams and you got families and everything else. So we sit down at lunch for an hour and a half and just let them talk. And we just said, tell me more about that. Well, what about your family? What about this? What about that? So we do that regularly. I mean, it could be anywhere. Like last night, there was about 9. But I take anywhere from 9 to 25 employees to dinner every month.
Wow.
And we sit around the table and everybody just has a great time. And it's like, they're called Eagle dinners because of the comments that they get from members that are above and beyond. It's a program I started in 1996 and I've been doing it every single month since 1996. And so some of the people will stand up and read the comments made about each individual person from the members, but they may have 15 things written about them, right? But we're bringing up the one that's the reason why they're there. And then we just say, look, the most important thing now is to make sure you call all those members and say thank you for them writing. I said, because a lot of times people will write a comment they see as an ego comment, but to us, it's just the person doing their job. All right. So what we look for is like exceptional stuff. And that's all we do. We clap for him. But like one of the guys who was there last night, he goes, this is so cool. He goes, because I really just see everybody at work and I don't know anything about them other than their work. It's so great to hear people talk and have these conversations and everything. A lot of people don't realize the word company stands for to break bread together. So I figured we'll break bread together and we'll talk. And it just kind of lowers everybody's defenses. So they know they can talk to me. There's, no issues, that they never have to be afraid, of me. But then we also have another dinner, and we'll have anywhere from 35 to 70 people come twice a year. And we call them the Rock All-Stars. And we usually have it at my house, and I have it catered. And catered. But anyway, it's a great event because it's not because of comments by the members that they're there. It's because of their supervisor, their immediate supervisor, talking about something exceptional that they do as a person in their department. And those are called the Rock All-Stars. There's a whole nother story behind that. So anyway, so we do it all the time to be able to be connected.
How many people work for you?
Right now we have, between the two, we have about 440.
Nice.
The health club has about 400. The rehab center has about 40.
Yeah. Wow. How much is the 75-person dinner?
How much what?
How much is the 75-person dinner?
I cannot understand. What for dinner?
How much does the 75-person dinner run? Like,
oh, you mean how much does it cost?
Yeah.
I don't know. doesn't matter.
Here's the credit card.
I don't, well, I mean, I bring in the caters, whatever it is, what it is. So I don't even ask. I mean, my CFO pays the bill and whatever it is, what it is.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, Joe, this was awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're very welcome.
What do you got going on the rest of today in the Cirulli world?
Well, I'm still in this meeting that I'm at, so I'm going back to the meeting, and this meeting goes on till 4 o'clock.
Wow.
I've been one of the things on my list was to become a pilot, own my own airplane. I've been flying for 34 years, and my airplane's been down in Tampa, because every year you have to have what's called an annual, where they check everything out on your airplane, and they've had it for 3.5 weeks, and I just went back down to Tampa and flew it out of there after they finished everything. So I could leave tonight to go down to Sarasota, because that's where I usually go on the weekend, but I'm gonna go to work in the morning, do some things, and then head on down to Sarasota. So.
Oh, are you in Tampa right now?
No, I'm in Gainesville. I flew. My CFO drove me down to Tampa yesterday, and then I flew the plane out of there after.
Okay. Do you ever get tired of flying? Do you have somebody fly you, or is that?
No, I'm a pilot. No, I've been flying for all those years, and I still love every time I get in the airplane and go fly. I mean, I see some of the most beautiful sunsets you could ever imagine. So no, I still love flying.
Yeah. What Josh likes to ask if you have any jokes.
Yeah, but I can't tell them to you.
any clean jokes?
No, can't remember. I'd really have to dig deep to find some clean jokes. But I remember I found a bunch of dirty ones, and my father years ago had a stroke, and when he was in the hospital bed, I sat down. I would read these jokes to him. It was so great to see my father start laughing like hell.
Nice.
So we'll leave those. We'll leave
later. What about what are you reading right now? Are you reading a book right now?
Yeah, I'm reading Leader Shift, and
Who wrote that?
John, what's his name there, the big guy?
Maxwell?
John Maxwell, yeah.
Okay.
And the other one, I'm not sure who the author was. It's not in English. I mean, the book's in English, but the author's name isn't. It's called Outthink the Competition. So one of the things that I try to do every year, and I'm 99% successful at it, but I took off for 2 weeks in January, went down to Sarasota, and I brought books to read. I brought magazines to read. I just wanted to spend the entire time thinking about what's next, because I always have to think about what's next. Mm-hmm. And I came back, and I have a bunch of projects that are what next, but nothing big yet, but something will. I will figure it out. It's just like I was telling you about the outdoor pavilion. It's like for a year with all this stuff with COVID, and everybody's talking about outdoor training and all.
Well, here's what's next, right? Like you got to get the VR goggles in there.
Yeah.
And train with, and we had Dave Meltzer on, I think, Josh, was it? He said you train in a stadium and everybody's cheering for you in the VR goggles or something like that. I mean, that would be awesome. Like,
yeah. Some of the things when these kind of things start, I can monitor it, because it's not like, and see what's happening with it, because it's not like I have to be the first in the industry to do it. I mean, there's some things we get first, but it's not like my main goal. We have to be first in the industry. I just have to be the first in my town.
Yeah.
So I'm tracking.
Well, you're the only in the town, right?
No, there's a lot. We have Crunch, we have Planet Fitness, we have UFit, we have the university. We got a bunch of.
It kind of reminds me of I worked at a video store when I was I don't know, in high school or something like that. You remember your ages? I need to like catch up on my age, like exactly what, probably 16, right? And it was all cassettes. What do they call video?
Oh, the
VHS, right? And then there was a little section of DVDs. Maybe you do like a little section of VR goggles.
Right.
And then slowly the DVDs started taking over.
You know, we actually, years ago, we tested it out.
We're all out of business.
Yeah, I say years ago, we tested out. We couldn't really make it work, but I know that they've advanced, you know, a lot too. And there's a lot too. When I was in Sarasota trying to think through the next thing, one of the things that you realize is you have to watch and see what's happening, especially with the younger generation. You know, it's like this one guy said, yeah, I'm looking around my neighborhood and I see all these kids running around these little new sneakers, and they were called like Nike or something, you know. he goes, yeah, years went by and I realized I should have been paying more attention for Nike. And so, you know, you just have to keep your eyes open.
What do you think is next? What are you seeing?
Well, right now, I mean, a big part of the industry is huge part issues that people are having is with mental health, with stress, with all these other things. So we built an area out in our center. It's called Chill, CHILL. And we have all the hydro massage tables, a beautiful environment, you know, that we have in there. So one of the things that I'm looking at is what is the next thing? What are some of those things out there that we can offer as part of that experience? So that's still learning. I'm still trying to figure out what those things are. I mean, I look at a bunch of things, but nothing has just grabbed my attention, said, yeah, that's it. So, you know, we'll keep searching out there. You know, the outdoor training area that we built in is really beautiful. It's got roofs, Wi-Fi, lighting, everything.
So is it like Venice Beach, like you're training outside? Like,
but it's not, I don't have all the heavy weights out there. We have a lot of the functional training as well as group exercise classes outside. And the reason why is I built it up over a retention pond. So it's about 5 feet in the air over the retention, so no water can ever get on it. And so I can't have them dropping heavy weights, you know, on it. Even though we got thick flooring and all, I don't want it to go through and end up in the retention pond. So we're figuring those things out now, which means we're putting together plans for offering classes to younger kids, like 10, 11, 12-year-olds, that we don't have to have them inside the club, but we can create great training programs outside. You know, I'm looking at all the different programs that are successful around the world and saying, okay, how can we adapt? How can we put together our version of that? Because it appears that it's working around the world. So those are the things, you know, that I look at. And you know, where I'm also, once again, very fortunate, there's inside our industry, there's a group called the Rex Roundtables. And there are groups of anywhere 12 to 15 health club owners, or there's other groups that are for managers, and there's other groups that are for marketing directors. But these groups meet all over the world. And as these groups form in Europe, they always ask me to come over for the initial group to help them get started. So I get to meet health club owners from not only America, but from all over the world. And so you get to learn, you know, from them, what kind of things are you working on? And when you start talking to them, especially in these, you hear some of the coolest things. I mean, I'll tell you one, I know you've got to probably end this, but I was in Italy, and you know, Simon Sinek, if you listen to Start With Why. Well, Simon, who I've gotten to be friends with,
nice.
He had it dubbed in Italian. So, I mean, it's with the subtitles. So for this first group, I showed it to them. I said, I want you to listen to this. So they watched the whole thing. And I said, now I want to go around the room and I want to find out, why do you do what you do? One guy said, I don't really like what I do. He went through everything. I said, okay. And we went on to the next. Later on, that guy sat down with me in tears and telling me why, because how the partners in the business are destroying it. But there was this one kid, his name was Johnny, and Johnny was a smaller guy. And I said, Johnny, why do you do it? He goes, when I was growing up, I was always smaller than everybody else. And I knew that I was never going to win anybody over because of my physical prowess. So I decided to become the best in the world at something. He says, so I became the world kickboxing champion. He goes, and I open up my centers so I can take young kids and make them understand what they're capable of. So it's those kind of things that you hear from people everywhere that keep everybody inspired, and keep us all working hard, looking for ways to be able to help people. So anyway.
Joe, I feel like we could have you on here for hours. It's like, we didn't even get to like any of our questions.
Maybe some other time we can do your
I mean, if people haven't gotten the gist of how to never go broke again through this, I think that was such high level information, Joe. That was great. So we appreciate it. Josh, you have anything else you want to bring up or?
No, Joe, thanks for coming on. Lastly, one final thing. What do you want people to say about you when everything's said and done?
Probably the most important thing is inside the business that I help everybody build their passion for what they do and to become better leaders because of spending time inside our company. And that's probably the most beneficial thing is people who've moved on from our organization, who became very successful. And it's just like I had yesterday, a kid who became very successful down in Miami. And he wanted to meet with me and he said, I just want to tell you that I just want to thank you for everything I learned while I was here, because I've applied it over my whole life and it's helped me build a great family and a great business and become successful in things that he's doing. So those are probably the most important things.
That has definitely happened. Just to toot your horn a little bit, I was a member there a while back, years and years ago. I heard Travolta used to work out there. I'm sure you heard about that. If that's even true, I don't know if that was a rumor.
Yeah, he would come in. I got to meet John. He's very good.
Did he come I heard he came in at like 3 a.m. or something like that. Was that?
Yes.
It was so weird. I heard it and I was like, I never seen. And then I actually walked right into Tebow, into him one time. I was like,
yeah,
this guy's a brick wall, man. And he drove a scooter. I was like, what is this? It's his Heisman year. Those are the years I lived there. What is this Heisman Trophy guy, Heisman candidate doing on the scooter? But yeah, I ran into him there. So yeah, it's big, beautiful gym. It's as good as it gets, up to date, modern. Everybody's working out there. It's the best place in town. So
not yet. We're still working.
Well, never better. But yeah, and you've done a great job, and you put forth a lot of nuggets in such a nice way to make people think, all right, you got to be not nice to get places sometimes. And all these high level, I'm not what you're doing in Rev, but all these high level, every time I meet these higher level people, they're so nice. Everybody's so nice. And I'm like, all right, maybe the movies are wrong or.
Well, I'll tell you a quick into it. When I was a kid, I thought that rich people were jerks. That's all I thought. Rich people were jerks until I became an instructor and I used to help all these people work out. Then people would come to me and say, John Mullen, he's a multi-millionaire. Dennis, he's a multi-millionaire developer. And all of a sudden I'm going, well, this is odd. They're just nice as hell guys. Then I realized what the problem was. The only ones I met were rich, were young, the kids who they gave too much to. They were the jerks. The people who worked their ass off, they always stayed. They stayed humble because they knew where they started. The kids didn't. And that's probably the biggest mistake. Dad, I think, what's his name? The huge basketball player that's always on TV, the commercials.
Shaq?
Shaq. Do you hear the comment he made? He goes, yeah, no. my kids say, we're rich. He goes, no. He goes, I'm rich. You're not rich.
Yeah.
So they never think that they got it because they're rich. They're not rich. I'm rich. You're not rich.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I appreciate you guys. And if you want to do it sometime in the future to get to your questions, we can try that.
All right, Joe. Yeah, well, maybe Josh is a Seminole, but maybe we'll get out to Gainesville one time.
Sounds great. You just let me know when.
Yeah, man. All right, Joe. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
And Joe, I'm pretty confident the way he does business, he's never going broke again. So if you guys decide to mirror that or emulate that, you're probably never going broke yourself. And if you are, you can call Joe. He's at Gainesville Health and Fitness, and ask him, why am I broke? But it'll probably be good in my opinion.
Yeah, well, thank you guys very much.
All right, Joe.
All right, thanks, Joe.